Something lovely about that idea, about not just unconditional love, but unconditional love that you can experience through your five senses. I know that there's unconditional love for all of us, and that is what we call spirit or God or the one. And isn't it kind of nice when it shows up in form? Isn't it kind of nice when we say, yes, I have absolute prosperity, and right now it's in my bank account. I can point to it. I could spend it. There is infinite good available to me, and it comes with red sauce last night and cheese. And some of us even started with dessert. It was just, taste testing. It's a service we provide. This month we're talking about oneness. We're talking about the not just the little f fact, but the capital T truth, that there is only one thing. It is the power and presence of that thing that goes beyond a name. It is that what in unity they say, God is all there is and God is good. It is that ineffable, I love that word, ineffable. It means that which cannot be said and probably shouldn't be said. Because when you put a word to it, it boxes it in. It is that thing that is beyond words. And it is here as each and every one of you, as each and every one of us, and as all of the things, the 10 million things of the universe. That oneness, man, I could just go on about the oneness, but I should probably do the talk. Those 10 million things, or the 10,000 things, I think is how they say it in Taoism, that make up the one, all interact with each other. The roses interact with the rock, even if they don't look like it. So our subject today is understanding our interdependence. Now, I recognize that is sometimes thought of as anathema. Move the camera, please. I'm being told to move this way. I'm like, no, move the rest of the world to suit me. And it worked. Thank you, dear. So what I want to talk about is this American idea, which, unless you travel the rest of the world, it just seems normal to us because we live here. This is where we are. So this is the way we do things, right? Kind of like mom cuts the sandwich in a certain way. And if you don't cut it that way, it's wrong. Like somehow the way you cut the bread is going to affect the taste of the sandwich. Apparently it does if you're 4. I have learned this. So we have this thing called rugged individuality. We are very proud of our independence in this country. And it permeates more of our thinking than I had ever realized until I started meditating on it. We have an idea that we can all pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Have you heard that phrase? Once upon a time, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps referred to doing the impossible, being asked to do that which was neither reasonable nor sane. Think about that. We expect people now to do what our forefathers acknowledged was not possible. Now it's like the song Everyday Goddess. I'm just doing all my goddess duties, trying to find a way. Doing the impossible every single day. Does anyone just get tired thinking about putting on that cape and tights for one more day? It's supposed to snow tomorrow. Those tights are going to be flipping cold. And I don't know about you, but usually if you're a female superhero, it's usually not a lot of tights or anything else. I always used to think that the female superhero's first real power was keeping those clothes on when they were trying to move around. It's just not right. We talk about our independence as if we each made it to the promised land alone. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers that gets really deeply into the idea that no one, I don't care who you are, gets through this life alone. Reverend Dr. Michelle Madrano used to say, no one can do it for you, but no one can do it by themselves either. We come together in community because we have a very human and divine need to come together in community. It's what we do as human beings, divine human beings. And yet we still have this pressure, this cultural pressure, to be able to do it all by ourselves. This week, if you're as much of a science geek as I am, you heard that OPI, also known as the Mars Opportunity Rover. For those of you who don't know, this is a solar-powered robot that was designed to last 90 days on the face of Mars. 15 years later, it finally stopped. Now, we made this thing in our image and likeness to go out into the world and explore. We also made it in our image and likeness in terms of needing to be acknowledged by others. This little robot used to sing happy birthday to itself for 15 years by itself on the planet. It was listened to. It was forever sending back messages to NASA. And it taught us that when life was coming to be on Earth, Mars was habitable too. It found that big, conspiracy theory lovers always knew about the water on Mars. It was real. They found the evidence. But last June, OPI sent a message saying, my battery's low and it's getting dark. It's a flippin' robot, guys. In another life, it probably opened and closed our garage doors. And yet, we made it an image and likeness of ourselves, and so it was able to express, at least through our perception, a very human need to not be alone, to not have to do everything by itself. It existed to send back messages and to connect with its creator. Sound familiar? To connect with its creator. Ernest Holmes wrote in the Science of Mind textbook, we find that man is one with everything physical in the physical world, one with the soul of the universe in the subjective world, and one with the Spirit of God in the conscious world. If we try to pretend we are separate, what happens? Just like OPI, eventually we run out of energy. And that separateness cuts us off from the energy of life itself. We slow down, things get dark and cold, and we stop. What does that say about our need to be completely independent? Maybe it's not good for us. We could do it. The OPI was only supposed to last 90 days, and it lasted 15 years. And you know what else I found interesting? It actually went dark back in June. It took us this long to be sure that that's what was going on, that we couldn't re-up it. It got caught in a dust storm, and things got, discombobulated in its guts, which sounds gross, but there you go. one of the things I know about this country is that it seems like there's a lot of dust storm going on in the consciousness of this country. Is it possible that part of that is because we think we each have to do it alone? And not only can I not ask for help, not only is it not safe for me to connect, if you ask me to connect, if you ask me for help, that means something's wrong with you. How dare you? I promise you, every practitioner in this room is going, oh God, please ask. Please ask. I spent 3.5 years, and in some cases, a couple $1,000 so that people would ask. And now we're all too proud to ask. The whole point of all of that training and all of that discipline was so that people would ask us to be with them, to connect with them in prayer. Some of us went really nuts and became ministers. So now you're talking 5 figures. And in order to get ordained, it took me 13 years. If you don't ask, what the heck was I doing? I could have been out at happy hour. A lot of happy hours. But no, I went and did my homework. Because Spirit within me spoke and said that connection is what will feed me. That connection is the life that I am here to gift, is the connection. And so independence to a degree is a good idea, but maybe we need to be careful and take a look at how we're using it. Be careful and make sure it's not poisoning us. Once upon a time, people took Coke syrup as a medicine. And now we're like, oh look, opium and cocaine. Maybe not. Maybe using that too much, maybe going too far into that kind of stuff is bad for us. You know, cocaine has done some damage in this world. It's also done a little bit of good. Freud used it, which explains some of his theories. But he asked some great questions too. So what about dependence, which is the opposite? True dependence is a normal and natural state of growth. You think about infants. If you don't, it's not like you're going to say, go get your own bottle, right? I mean, I got to the age where, my mother looked at me and said, what are your hands broken? Go get it. But with infants, with those who are truly dependent, there is something in that sweetness of surrender. If you are 16 and still expect mommy to go get your bottle, something has gone sadly awry. When I was working for the public defender's office in San Diego, I got a phone call from a woman who was furious with me because apparently the entire legal system is my fault. It just so happened that I was the one who picked up the phone. I was the receptionist. But she was furious because her son was still in jail. And why didn't I understand that what he needed was treatment? And so I thought, oh, ma'am, this is adult. This is the adult division. You need juvenile. No. He's been charged as an adult. It took me a while, but I finally, she was doing everything she could to help her baby. And I was trying to find him in the system, and so I finally asked for a birth date. The man was in his 50s. Now that reaction you just had was the Spirit within you saying, let's not denigrate this man and pretend he is less of the divine being than any of the rest of us. If we make other people dependent on us, if we choose to be fully dependent on other people to do that which we could do for ourselves, that's the other end of the spectrum, and it's just as sick as being totally alone. But if that's a spectrum somewhere, I'm thinking there's a middle ground, yes? This is what we call interdependence. Interdependence says that which That good that I wish for myself is the good I desire for all people everywhere. And you guys all just affirm that. It is a recognition that what serves one serves all, and what hurts one hurts all. It is the understanding that no one does it alone and no one can do it for you. As my mother used to say, one tide raises all boats. So it is for us to recognize with John Donne that, first of all, no man is an island. That what hurts somebody else hurts me. That if or when I wake up to the idea that there are some people who are being discriminated against in my world, that discrimination hurts me. It hurts the person discriminating, and it hurts the person being discriminated against. It is not healthy. I'm not saying it's evil, because I don't believe in evil as a thing in and of itself. I'm saying it's not healthy. And it's not doing our world a lot of good these days, yes? Sometimes we do things trying to make things better, and it has that cascade effect. So in the 1920s, the people at Yellowstone were more than happy to see all the gray wolves go away. The ranchers liked it. The elk that they were eating, I'm sure liked it, however you say that in elk. There were a lot of things that kind of shifted because this apex predator was no longer there. Now, when I say apex predator, it sounds like the sci-fi movie, right? It's got to do battle with Alien or whichever one it has done 5 times now. Sorry, at home, my sister is watching a lot of the sci-fi and the horror stuff, and so I've watched Final Destination 6, 7, 8, 12. I'm like, that's not a final destination, guys. It's a whole itinerary. Back to the point. So what happened was the elk were very happy. They weren't being hunted, so they just kind of went to town and started eating all of the young willow, aspen, and cottonwood plants. Guess what happened? That was really hard on the beaver who need those plants to make their dams. Without those dams, the rivers shifted. Without the rivers being where they were, the water for the fish stopped being so well shaded, which is what they needed. And all of those trees were no longer habitat for the songbirds. You move one little thing, and it's what my old minister used to call the law of unintended consequences. You call them unintended consequences when what you really mean to say is, oops. You call it serendipity when you're like, yeah, I meant to do that. That's exactly what I wanted. Yay! So when the wolves came back, you wouldn't think that introducing a wolf would have anything to do with fish or birds, or the way that rivers run, the direction of the river. And yet we are so completely intertwined at a spiritual level, and it shows up at the physical level. It couldn't help but have this domino effect, to have this ripple effect on the rest of the world. And you know, I was thinking about wolves and how it is that sometimes I get rid of things in my life because I think they're bad. I'm the only one, right? There's that person who's difficult, and so I make them go away. And then darned if they don't show up with a different face and name somewhere else. It's like playing whack-a-mole. I play whack-a-mole with the problems in my life. Or I sit down and figure out what scares me about them. What feels icky about them to me? Because 9 times out of 10, it's the fact that they're holding up a mirror. And I'm like, oh God, what happened? Oh, Lord, help me. There's something in me that I don't want to see. There's something about me that I find unattractive. I know I'm the only one, right? No one has ever declared a national emergency because somebody else done something and maybe went a little overboard with the freak out. I'm sorry, there was a point there. I distracted myself for a moment. Other people. Whatever, we'll come back to it. What happens when, oh, that's right, wolves. Wolves are bad, thoroughly bad, if you wear a little Red Riding Hood. Ranchers didn't like wolves because they were eating the cattle. And so wolves became the whole bad thing, and that's part of why they were gotten rid of. Was anyone else here addicted to West Wing when it came out? Okay, do you remember the episode in which one of the characters finds out that wolves are not as bad as we thought they were, that they actually do help the ecosystem? And at some point, they quoted a statistic that said more people have been killed by vending machines than wolves. And then there was a whole debate about how do you get killed by a vending machine? And so there was a very high-minded debate about that. It's not by eating what's in the vending machine. I figured that part out. But something like 5 people were killed by vending machines and 3 by wolves that year. We have things we think are dangerous in our world, but if we stop and really look at them, vending machines are worse for us than that thing we think is going to kill us all. See, I told you I had a point. So what happens when we get it wrong? Because that interdependence, I don't know about you, but for me it's kind of a delicate dance. I don't know when I'm giving too much and when I'm not giving enough. I have that dance with some people where I am overgiving and forgetting that they too are a manifestation of the divine. And when, maybe I cut somebody off too soon. Maybe looking back on it, I can see the more I could have done. Does anyone else torture themselves in that way? It's like having your arm stuck in a vending machine. And so we can, if we choose to, torture ourselves with that particular dance. Or we can slow down. We can be still and know the divine for a moment. We can get quiet within our own hearts and souls and ask the highest wisdom within ourselves, that divine being, what's going on here? What is mine to do? What is mine to let go of? What is mine to humbly surrender so that the divine, as someone else, can be in charge of their own life without any help from me? The Dalai Lama talks about it in terms in Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World. And what he writes is, for example, imagine that your car won't start. I remember when I was surprised when it did. As a matter of fact, I got my mom into my new car and I turned it on and I turned it off and I turned it on and I turned it off, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Look, it does it every time," and I turned it on. But imagine for a moment your car won't start. And the Dalai Lama wrote, for you to keep turning the key again and again, becoming frustrated and running the battery down and making that god-awful noise, you know that noise? Would be foolish. It would be more realistic to pause and consider what might have caused the problem. Could it be a lack of fuel? Something to do with rainy weather? Anyone ever had their distributor cap start leaking and you end up out there with your hairdryer trying to dry it off? So your car, okay, you didn't have that car either, did you? Simply stepping back and looking at the situation from a broader perspective will allow you to approach the problem more calmly. So if you find yourself in that dance of interdependence and you start seeing the law of unintended consequences happen, slow down the dance. Slow down and put aside the blame and the frustration if you can. It's okay to feel it, but if you live there, it's not gonna really do you much good, is it? Slow down and just get still with the one mind in which are the answers to all issues. I was taught early on the only problem is a belief in separation, and the one healing statement is there's only one. Those are the only two issues. That's the only issue you ever need to deal with, and there's your answer, oneness. We slow down. We look at, okay, something has gone awry here. That's just feedback from the physical world. It's just feedback. It's an error message from the divine Google. And so we slow down and we look for where things went sideways. And we reconnect in such a way that it allows us to be effective in the world. This is the essence of our teaching. We look at the world not to see where we messed up, but to see what feedback it's giving us and where we can live a bigger life, live a more connected life. Acknowledge our interdependent with the other faces of the Christ or the Buddha or Atman that exist in this world. And in order to do that, we get quiet in a thing called meditation. And another option we have is to go to prayer. So I know that the lights don't go down here, but I still am. Because I pray from here to remind us that we are one. That while the voice into the microphone right now sounds like me, it is the divine within you that hears these words, that agrees with them if that's appropriate. And so joining me in agreement with truth absolutely is what makes this so. And so I ask you to join me now and feel into these words and accept them as your own if it feels true. That there is only one power and one presence in the universe. It is God, it is good, it is ultimate truth. It is that thing that goes beyond words and yet is coming out of our mouths and rolling around as thoughts in our individual minds every day. The absolute truth of who we are and what we are is good. The absolute truth of who and what we are is interdependent in our oneness. And so as our souls seek atonement or at-one-ment, what we really seek is the truth that lives within us already. It is the absolute good that we are. And as we stand in that truth, as we allow that light to shine, everything else simply fades away. All the other issues go back into the nothingness from which they came, because in that light of truth, in that light of oneness is all wealth, is all power, is all peace, is all wholeness that we experience physically as health. The eternality of our souls is bound up in that truth. We cannot make it go away. We might try and ignore it for a bit, but the truth of us is that power and perfection. It is that beauty and joy. And so I bless that which already is and stand in humble acknowledgement of the marvelous, magnificent soul that we are. The incredible depth and wisdom of the one mind that thinks through each and every one of us, and that is the answer to every question. Is the healing for every dis-ease. And it is the beauty within every unconditional rose as it comes up through the rocks. In this truth, we are blessed and a blessing. As we live in this truth, our lives become our gift to the world. A gift which I choose to gratefully accept, giver and given. I bless the truth that this is what God is and has always been. That this is what life is and has always been and is becoming even more of, more obviously, in our world right now. And resting in that, surrendered to that good, I accept it on behalf of all of us. I let Spirit get on with being what it is. And together we affirm, and so it is.